Happy Tuesday, Foxy listener. You're listening to episode 74, Beneath the Sheets.
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited for Foxy listeners to tune in because you all know I'm all about having fun. It's my tagline. And today's guest, how can I not start this way? It has been a very long time since I've been able to find somebody who's awesome in bed, but this guy literally has it written on his t-shirt. And when else do you get an opportunity to interview somebody in bed? It's the best. And I'm so excited to have Colin McIntosh join us today, who is the founder and CEO of Sheets and Giggles. Can you get a better name than that? Colin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Tanya. That was a very warm introduction. Probably the warmest introduction I've gotten in a long time. That's great.
I just couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. So tell people a little bit about your story, sort of how it came to be that you started this business.
Well, it's a weird story and a long story. I have a very bizarre career. I started my career at the world's largest hedge fund in Connecticut, working in the trading technology department there. Then I got fired in about 5 months, became a recruiter at the agency that hired me there, ironically. Ended up hiring myself at a startup client that was one of my clients in Seattle, moved to Seattle, got into startups. And then in 2015, I did a program called TechStars, which is a global accelerator for startups and very well known. And it was a great opportunity for me to kind of advance my career and learn a lot about starting a business and what it takes to found a company. I wasn't the founder of that company. I was just on the founding team. And that company was great. It was a wearable technology company. So I got into physical products, consumer electronics, consumer branding. I really learned a lot about logistics and supply chain and manufacturing and distribution channels. And basically when that company came to a close, unfortunately, we had raised millions of dollars and had 30 people working in downtown Denver at one time. We all got laid off at 1 p.m. on a Monday in September 2017. And I think that was the first day that I ever verbalized to someone that I wanted to start a bedding company called Sheets and Giggles, to which my then ex-coworkers said, like, what the hell are you talking about? And there's a lot in there in terms of like why bedding, why S&G specifically. But it's been almost 3 years now, and I'm very happy with what we've done. We've, in the last 3 years, we've shipped tens of thousands of units. I think we're close to 100,000 customers now. We did the largest crowdfunding campaign ever for bedding at $284,000 crowdfunded on Indiegogo. And we, since then have raised millions, made millions. We've planted tens of thousands of trees. We do one for every single order. And also our sheets are made from eucalyptus lyocell, which is a sustainable material. And so we've saved, we estimate hundreds of thousands of years worth of drinking water compared to cotton sheets in our production. We use no insecticides, no pesticides. And so there's a lot of pieces in terms of like why bedding and why S&G, and I'm happy to get into that. But that's just a little bit about me and my background. It's a really weird background, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, tell us a little bit about bedding, because that is like it. I mean, it's a huge industry, but I imagine one it's extremely hard to sort of not necessarily break into, but make an impact on.
It's hard to. So it's a $12 billion industry in the United States, growing 10% year over year. It's highly fragmented. So the top 5 players in the bedding industry only own about 25-30% of the industry. Which is really great, which means there's a lot of room for smaller players to come and carve out a very good, profitable niche. And it's also a market that I think is a very flat brand space. So there's very little differentiation in the market. And these are all pieces that I wanted in my business model. And so I actually, to take a step back, I came up with the idea for a bedding company back in June 2017. I was watching a movie called War Dogs with Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. This is a true story. Miles Teller's character is selling bed sheets out of the back of his pickup in the beginning of the movie, and he's having no success with it. And I got so frustrated with this character. I was like, this guy, he didn't do any market research, or, you know, has no idea what demographics he's selling to, doesn't understand his business model, doesn't understand his pricing structure. And I was like, you know what? And I told my now ex-girlfriend, ex for a reason, because I'm a psychopath like this. I was like, you know what? Pause the movie. And I paused the movie and I wrote a business plan for a bed sheets company that night. And I always think, what's a funny name for blank whenever I come up with a company idea? And so I was like, Sheets and Giggles, that's a funny name. And so I bought the domain that night. I got all the social handles. And then 4 months later, when I actually incorporated, I just realized that it worked out perfectly with what I was looking for, because like I said, it's a massive market, highly fragmented, zero brand differentiation, zero loyalty, no switching costs. 38% of Americans buy new bed sheets every single year. So I've just got to be right place, right time in order to win that business. And I realized that there were no good sustainable options in the market, because about 60% of the market is polyester, which is petroleum based, and about 30% is cotton, which is, you know, very unsustainable in a number of different ways, from water usage, insecticide usage, energy usage. And so I was very excited to discover this material, eucalyptus lyocell, which is made from eucalyptus trees, 3rd generation cellulosic rayon, bamboo viscose being the 1st generation of this process. Lyocell is much cleaner. It's actually a closed loop process where they reuse the solvents in every batch of wood pulp production. Probably get into a little bit of the weeds here, but that basically, when I saw the business in front of me and I knew that I could do it in this very funny, very, very different way, and walk this tightrope between like sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and fun, and with a premium product, it just really came together for exactly what I was looking for. And I just felt so damn compelled by that business model.
And so what made you decide to start the crowdfunding campaign, and what was that process like for you?
Well, so in terms of why the crowdfunding campaign, people, I think, have different reasons for why they do crowdfunding. I think there's, generally speaking, 2 main ones. One is that they want to get to market and they need money in order to get to market. And the second is that they want to validate it and figure out if they should put more money behind it, or go out and try to raise more money behind an idea. And for me, it was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I knew that starting a pun-based bedding brand would not be the sexiest pitch to investors, even though I had a good investor network and I had a good group of people, that mentors and other advisors that could introduce me to the right people to talk about investment. I just knew that it wasn't going to be the most compelling thing to kind of pitch. And so I really, really wanted that validation piece. Additionally, I really wanted at least $100,000 in crowdfunded pre-orders, because that was sort of the minimum amount of money that I needed to actually bring a product to market and ship units out to end customers. You said, you know, it's a large space. It's a difficult space to break into, specifically because it's so large. So in order to get any type of product off the ground, generally speaking, you need anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 in order to begin production on anything in any significant volume at any reasonable cost. And so it was definitely something to where I knew 6-figure campaign was the minimum for us to be successful, to actually get something out the door. And at the same time, I knew that number would also be attractive to investors in order to actually invest in the company. And so those are the 2 goals. And then the way we went about it was very simple. And this is actually something that you might want to, I don't know if we want to talk about further, or if your guests might want to bookmark. But basically, crowdfunding is like a very linear, like a very specific mathematical process. So let's say you want $100,000 for your campaign, right? You generally want 30% of whatever your goal is on day 1 of the campaign. That's how crowdfunding math works. Big spike, plateau, small spike at the end. And so if you're doing $100,000 goal, $30,000 on day 1, we have $70 product. I assume the average person would buy 1.5 units. That's $100 average order value. Therefore, for $30,000 on day 1, I needed 300 customers on day 1, period. An email list will reasonably convert at around 3%, 2% if you're doing something poorly, 4% if you're doing something well. So therefore, if we need 300 customers and the majority of those are going to come from my email list, I needed 10,000 emails if I was going to be successful with my crowdfunding campaign. And so from January 2018 to April 30th, 2018, my number 1 laser focus was gathering 10,000 emails of interested, excited people who were going to be great crowdfunding targets. And so that's exactly what we did. We ended up gathering 11,000 emails in about 8 to 10 weeks of preparation. And then on May 1st, we launched. We did $45,000 on day one and $284,000 over the campaign.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing the numbers, because I think a lot of time we hear about, you know, businesses doing this, but people don't know how to go about it. So I think that's very, very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I am one that you can draw me in. I'm the consumer that you can draw me in with a name. And as we were talking about previously, I was gifted a set of your sheets because someone's like, we always know that you love funny names and we thought you would, you know, you would really enjoy this. And they're amazing sheets. I absolutely love the fact that you have a tag on the corner that tells you where it goes on the bed. I can't tell you, that added touch was like, that sold me. I was like, customer for life. So, but I know it can be really hard to be taken seriously when you have sort of like a humorous name or something like that to it. So what was your experience like with that?
With the name itself, you know, I love stuff that like visually kind of just stands out. And so I had all these ideas in my head when I was starting the company for the content that I wanted to do. I wanted to, you know, get 3 or 4 guys in bed doing, you know, wine nights and pillow fights and, you know, avocado face masks. And I wanted to have, you know, the dog stealing pizza off somebody's plate, or, you know, I wanted to do girls drinking whiskey and playing poker, and do some gender reversals, some different things. And really every time we do something, when I see something and I'm like, okay, I've never seen this before in any other bedding company's advertisement, that's when I know that we're really on to something. And because, you know, they're bed sheets, you know what they look like on a pillow, you know what they look like on a bed, you know what they look like folded. And so the amount of imagery out there in this industry that is just white sheets on a white wall, folded in the same pattern, it drives me absolutely insane. And there's always like a fern in the bedroom, or like a French press copy on the edge of the bed, which is like the worst place for a French press. And so like, I just was really excited about it. But the name itself, I knew was going to raise some eyebrows, just because it's so different from like, you know, Boll and Branch or like Parachute, or I'm kind of making fun of Boll and Branch actually with the ampersand a little bit. You know, or you know, like Casper, or like what, you know, like something a little like nicer and preppier. And so I remember the first investor I ever told about this was a friend of mine named Paul, and he's a local Denver investor. And we were eating lunch, and I told him, I said, I got this. He said, "What are you gonna do now that you're laid off?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I got this idea for this company, bedding company." Took him through the business model, like, and he says, "Huh, sounds really interesting." And then I said, "Yeah, and it's gonna be called Sheets and Giggles." And he kind of like stopped eating for a second. He looked up to me, and I swear to God, the words out of his mouth were, "What the are you talking about?" Like, and I was like, and so that was, you know, that was what I just assumed that pretty much everybody's reaction was going to be. And so that's why, and that's what it was for a lot, you know, like the chatter around Denver for a while was, you know, there's this guy named Colin, he's doing something weird with like this bedding company. Like, you know, he seems like a serious guy, but like, it's really, you know, this is like a weird thing that he's doing. And then it became like, oh wow, like this Denver company just raised $300,000 on Indiegogo. And then it became, oh whoa, like Sheets and Giggles just won first place at Denver Startup Week 2018, came with a big $95,000 like styrofoam check. We beat, you know, AI companies, B2B SaaS companies, like cryptocurrency companies. And then we got into Techstars, which is like a huge achievement. I think 10 out of 1,000 applicants get in every year. And we did Techstars Boulder 2019, and, you know, we got on stage, and then we ended up raising the most money out of anybody in our Techstars class coming off that stage. And so it was really, it's been really a fun time. I think my favorite microcosm of like not being taken seriously was in around February or March 2018. I applied to do a panel at Denver Startup Week for that year. And I said, I want to do a panel. I want it to be on like consumer branding and crowdfunding. I'm about to do a crowdfunding campaign for my new company, Sheets and Giggles. And, we're gonna, by the time September rolls around, that startup week, we should have, raised some money. We'll be shipping products, like we'll be in market. And the email I got back was very polite. Hey, Colin, this is a cool idea, but, with all due respect, maybe you should, accomplish something before you want to go out and, teach people about branding or about, something business oriented. And I said, okay. And then 6 months later, I won first place at Denver Startup. And then a year later in 2019, I judged the startup pitch competition at Denver Startup Week. And so that's my chip on the shoulder, like always, like, hey, why don't you come back to us when you actually do something? And I was like, all right. And then I did something. So, and then of course, that's the crazy thing, honestly, if I can talk about, and I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I had a lot of coffee today. But the thing in this country, in America, that drives me absolutely up the wall crazy is that people conflate success for wisdom. In 6 months, between when I applied to do a panel and when I won first place at Denver Startup Week back in 2018, nobody gave a damn what I had to say. No one cared at all I had to say. And to be fair, you need to look for indications that somebody that you're listening to actually knows what they're talking about. So that's fair. But on the other hand, I was fundamentally the exact same person 6 months later that I was when I applied to speak. And the frustrating thing is that now everybody, I did a pitch coaching today for 10 startups that are pitching on stage next week. I've done, I'm doing, advisory hours for Denver does a great program, a free program for entrepreneurs, where, I get to come in and do mentorship hours. I'm doing that for them tonight from 6 to 7:30. Like, I love doing stuff like that, but no one asked me to do it. And now everybody wants me to do it. And it's just funny how quickly it goes just when you find a little bit of success. And I think it's kind of sad. Especially when people really conflate wealth for wisdom. But it is, it's definitely something that I've noticed, just an aside on that. So,
and I think it's true, because I think that happens anywhere. I mean, I'm in Canada, but I see it all of the time when, I've sat on so many boards, and I would say, we've got all of these amazing local people that are so talented, that have done so much, and we're not utilizing them. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they're like, we need to get this person back. And I'm like, we could have had them for free a year ago, and now you're paying like $5,000 to get them in. Like,
it's crazy.
Like, yeah. And it's just, I agree with you. It's that weird dynamic that people, especially if it's somebody local, that they're like, oh no, they don't, we're going to bring people in, from another city.
New York or San Francisco or like wherever. Yeah, no, it's just really interesting. And, now, I think we've got one of the faster growing consumer brands in the country. And we actually have one of the I think we're maybe top 5 or top 10 fast growing Denver companies right now, which is really cool. But yeah, it's really, I don't know. It's just bizarre to see the change in just a few short years can make, when really I'm pretty much the same guy
yeah.
as I've always been. It's just, you start something and it works out, and it could have bombed. And then if it had bombed, nobody would have.
Right, exactly. That's just it. So you guys have been also doing a lot, over everything that's been happening in 2020, and, the world kind of being an upheaval. So I want you to take the opportunity to gloat, well, not to gloat, but to promote a little, gloat. Yeah. You got to toot your own horn about some of the stuff that you guys have been doing, because you've been doing like a lot of donation and a lot of efforts besides the trees that you've done that since you started the company. But tell us a little bit about some of the other initiatives that you've gone ahead with here in this new year.
Well, you talk about upheaval. I saw, there's a picture of the president's daughter with a can of beans on Twitter today. She's promoting a bean company during a pandemic and a recession. I don't know what the hell's going on in the world. I feel like this year's totally jumped the shark. Like every day I wake up and it's like a fresh horror. But it's, so basically what I'm, and I don't want to say gloat, but like I am super proud that like my weird little betting company has been able to do, we've donated $40,000 in cash to Colorado's COVID-19 emergency relief fund. which has gone to families and businesses that have been super impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Amazon recognized us as one of 6 small businesses making an impact during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was awesome. Like, we were in great company there, and I was so just like beyond proud to be mentioned in that article that Amazon wrote and interviewed for that. And then, the other thing that we're doing that I think is very cool and also a little under the radar is the city of Denver called us maybe 4 months ago when this all started in March, and they said, hey, we're asking around who has bed sheets in Denver, and your name keeps coming up, and we are building these what they call respite motels for symptomatic homeless individuals. So basically, if somebody comes to a homeless shelter, they're symptomatic, they have to separate them from the general population. Otherwise, it'll spread throughout the general pop, and the spread will rise throughout Denver. And so they built these like isolated little like motel rooms, and they needed linens for all the cots they were bringing in for these things. And so we ended up donating 228 twin and twin XL sheet sets, which is almost all the inventory we had on hand in those sizes. They're a very small percentage of our sales, to the city of Denver and to these homeless shelters. And now I think we've got about 300 people every night that are sleeping on these in these motels for symptomatic individuals, and that's tens of thousands of dollars in product. But it's just great, in the sense of 3 years ago when I founded this company after pretty traumatic layoff in the middle of the day, I get to hold my head up high and say, we've donated 40,000 in cash, tens of thousands in product, meaningfully been recognized by Amazon as one of 6 small businesses making a difference. And then we're also donating, I think we've donated a couple hundred, or maybe I'm overselling it because it's a lot of fabric, but we've donated maybe about 100 sheet sets to people that are, cutting them up and making masks out of them. And so we've got a great partnership with a group called Design by Us. If you go to designbyus.org, they have masks that are made with our eucalyptus lyocell fabric. That's really cool to see as well, that people are using our sheets as masks. So yeah, it's been a really, really wild 4 months, and I'm just, beyond proud that the company I started can contribute in any meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to promote it, because I think we sometimes get stuck. Entrepreneurs, I think of the people that don't promote a lot, all of the stuff that they do. It's sort of all done behind the scenes, and I understand that, but I think it's also important for other people to pull it out, to showcase it.
Yeah, we don't talk about it that much. We don't, maybe we made a blog post about it. I think we might have posted on Instagram about it at one point when Amazon wrote that article about us. But other than that, we don't really promote it in a sense. And it's just because we donated a few $1,000s to some Black Lives Matter organizations that are trying to end police brutality and militarization, which are causes that I care about and my team cares about and our community cares about. Last year, we donated almost $20,000 to the World Wildlife Foundation to help with koala conservation in the wake of the Australian wildfires. We do stuff like that all the time. Like instead of Black Friday like discount, we'll do 20% of gross sales donated to a charity that our community will vote on. And like I love stuff like that. That's very powerful for me. And the whole reason we do it in the tree planting, right, 1 per order, is because I basically want to do good as a function of being successful. And so I've built a lot of this into our variable cost structure, where understanding how much you can donate from each order and how much you can donate overall year by year, based on how successful you are. I mean, we might end up donating this year. It's expensive, but we might end up donating like 70,000 trees. I don't know if that's going to be accurate or not, but like it might end up being a lot. and that's really cool because we get to join. I think we're part of One Tree Planted's Million Tree Challenge now, and our funny little logo is alongside Facebook's because they donated 10,000 trees and we donated 20,000, and like we're like, and on Colorado COVID, you know what? There's a funny story about all the charity stuff. Colorado's COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund, they called me one day back in April or May, and they were like, hey, so are you CEO of Sheets and Giggles? I said, yeah. And they said, we see that you've donated $40,000 to the emergency relief fund. I said, yeah. And they were like, yeah, we were just going down our list and we saw like Denver Broncos, 50,000, Comcast, 100,000, like, you know, these like Charter Communications, like whatever. I don't know what the exact numbers were on any of these. And then we just saw like Sheets and Giggles, $20,000. And we were like, who are these people? Like who? And so they, you know, they gave me a call and talked. So I think that sometimes, you know, I got a bit too much of a bleeding heart, to be completely honest, for my own good. But it's makes me happy that even if the company, you know, explodes or goes up in smoke at some point in time, we can look back and be proud on what we accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And like I said, the name just kills me. Like even when I was sitting there, my husband's like, can you stop making commercials for this guy? And I was like, no, come on, you're stuck at home with COVID, Sheets and Giggles will help you out.
I love it. I love it.
Want to be awesome in bed? This is the, you know, he's like, knock it off. And I'm like, no, it's just too much fun to play with these names. And I think that it helps it to stick, right? Like
we have so much fun. My marketing team and I, we laugh all day long, and it's just so much fun to like come up with these ridiculous ideas and bring them to life, you know, like what if we, it's always like it comes up, we come up with an idea, like something ridiculous. Like what if we, I think recently we were workshopping this idea of like jumping into bed and then like landing in, somewhere else. Like, and so I was thinking like jumping into a bed and landing into like, you know, the jungle. And then like, you know, like the voiceover is like, you know, with Sheets and Giggles, like, you know, you pull up the bed sheets, it's like sleeping, you know, it's so sustainable. It's like sleeping in a forest. And then like the person in the forest is like, where am I? Like, it's like, you know, just like, like, you know, and so we've been workshopping a few different ideas like that, like jumping into like the ocean, like, you know, like, it's like, they're so cooling. It's like jumping into the middle of the Atlantic. And then it's just like the person's like floating and they're like, somebody help me, you know, like something like that. So like,
I love it.
Yeah. So, and, you know, other betting companies, they'll shy away from that stuff because like, you know, if you throw them that idea, they'll be like, ooh, do we really want people to think they'll be like scared, like sleeping in our sheets? And I'm like, people aren't morons. Like they get the bit, like, you know, like, and, you know, these other consumer brands, I'll tell you what, they drive me crazy. I don't know if you want to segue into that at all, but like,
yeah.
You know, I always love whenever I hear about a consumer brand, they're like, we're changing the way that people think about personal hygiene. It's like, no, you sell toothbrushes on the internet. And it's like, we're changing the way that cultures engage with one another. Like, no, you sell suitcases on the internet. And so I always like, it drives me crazy when I hear these like very lofty, like ridiculous missions of these companies. And then we probably do more than any of these other companies do in terms of like our charitable stuff. But if you ask me or any of my team members what we do, we say we sell bed sheets on the internet. And that's like, and I love that because it's just like, it's something to both like be proud of, have fun with, do good with, and be successful with. And there's like, I feel like all these companies are almost being disingenuous for like either their founder's own ego or, and I think this is actually true. And if you're 23 years old listening to this, take this to heart. They will do it as a recruiting tool. So they will trick you if you're a 22-year-old or a 23-year-old into thinking that you are actually helping cultures connect with one another. But no, you're doing customer service for a suitcase company. And that's okay. It's okay to do customer service for a suitcase company. It's okay to do customer service for a bed sheets company. I love my customer service team. They're the most important part of this company. But don't be fooled into thinking that you're doing some lofty, ridiculous mission, because what they will do is then use that to trick you into taking a salary that is below your market rate, to taking equity that is paltry and not meaningful, and to having benefits that are lower than the benefits that you would have working at another company. And so that's the thing that really drives me crazy is I see it as a former recruiter. I see it as a recruiting tool and a disingenuous one more than anything else, these like very lofty like missions.
Yeah. And I think it's true. I think people need to be paying attention, like not only to stuff that they're buying, but to what the companies stand for. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a change in that as people are doing the research, and it's not necessarily all about, well, this is a big brand name, so they must stand for something. People are going, no. I really want this to mean something. And I don't mind paying extra for something providing that they're actually standing behind what they say that they're doing. Because you see it all the time. Like, I mean, you can ask so many people, what's your company's mission statement? And then they go, I think we have one. It's like written on a wall somewhere.
Yeah, our core company values are, I think, like achieve our business and life goals, alleviate the world's problems, actively make others happy, and then I think the fourth one is assonance and alliteration. And then you go back and you read them and you realize they all start with A.
But I think it's important. Like, I think I love it because you're having so much fun with your company. And I feel like there's so many businesses out there who take themselves way too seriously. And all of a sudden, the whole dream, the whole, living life to the fullest and enjoying what you do and all of that other stuff gets forgotten, and it becomes a dog-eat-dog world. And why do that? Why not just have fun?
That happened to me earlier this year. I was, I in April, it was late March, April. It was a global crisis. It was the worst crisis in 100 years. And I retreated back into like this, like very like dark kind of like early stage CEO founder mode, where I was always pessimistic and always like upset and working 15-hour days and staying up till 5 a.m. And there's some you have to do that sometimes. Like you gotta sometimes you have to retreat into that shell. And I think that's, and I was actually dating somebody at the time, and they, early April, we ended up breaking up because, they couldn't deal with the constant, stress that I was putting on, by proxy, their life. And that's one of the things I think has been a reminder to me is like, in the last 3 or 4 months since then, basically, like, I started this company to help others and to make people laugh and to have fun myself and to be successful and to do things that make me happy and make my family happy and that make my employees happy and that builds a team that loves each other and that has fun with each other. And if we're doing that and we're achieving all that, then there's going to be some bumps in the road and supply chain challenges and there's going to be times when our sales drop because there's a pandemic. But at the same time, like you got to take time and take a step back. And I think entrepreneurs don't do this. I think people never do this. They never take a step back and say, what were the goals that I had set, that I originally set? Did I hit those? Oh, I did. What would I, if you had told me 12 months ago where we'd be now, would I have been happy? And I never asked myself that. And so I'm asking myself that a lot more now. And, especially taking time to remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not, work's a means to an end. It's not an end. Yeah. And I think that's been really crucial for me to keep in mind lately.
And I think that's true. I think I have learned that myself is that when I set a goal, I always take the time to sit and revel in the fact that I accomplished it, because too often you move on to the next one, you move on to the next one.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when you get stuck or something goes bad, now I have a big sheet of paper of all my goals so that I can look at them all the time and realize I am hitting this. I am and it works really well, especially when I'm having those days where you're like you said, where you're like, why am I doing this? Why do I do this to myself? Like, I'm just going to throw the towel in and call it a day.
Yeah. And those days are tough. I mean, those burnout days are real and they're tough. And, my team gets me through a lot of it. But you got to keep the energy high. And oftentimes, like an entrepreneur, it's hard to keep the energy high all the time. And it's a lonely existence sometimes too. But especially, I mean, I was thinking about all the things that I normally do to cope with the stress that I can't do right now. Canada sounds real nice right about now. Can't go.
Sorry, we've closed the door.
No, I regret not going there as soon as I could. I should have been working on my paperwork all these years. No, I mean, it's right now as a proud American, it's hard to see the light on a daily basis. Like I said, I'm like, there's like 27 million people in America have lost their health insurance by some estimates in the last 4 months because they gotten laid off. I mean, think about that. In this country, in my country, 27 million people have no healthcare right now because they got fired during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then I go on Twitter and it's like, you know, senior advisor to the White House, Ivanka Trump, holding a can of Goya beans because the CEO of a bean company said something nice about her father. I see that stuff and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Like it's out of control. And sometimes you ask yourself, like, am I the crazy person? Like, or like, is this other group of people crazy? And it's like, I get people are defending her holding the beans. Like, I'm really focusing on this one picture because it's so surreal. It's like the most surreal thing I've ever seen.
And I'm telling you, one of my superpowers is, like, I deal a lot in collaborations, and one of my superpowers is connecting the oddest companies together and making it work. But there's even a point where I'm like, how are you connecting that to anything else that you do? But I have to tell you, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but I have to tell you, for Canadians, it brings us much joy, not in everything that's happening with the pandemic, but just to watch your politics. For myself personally, has been one of my favorite comedy shows.
It would be so fun. I always think this. It would be so funny if there wasn't so much at stake. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
But the thing is like, as a Canadian, I would laugh out loud funny. It's like, it's, you know, and as an American, sometimes it's laugh out loud funny, and other times it's just like, you can't believe your eyes. Like, it's almost like you're like, and the funny thing is, like, people that maybe I disagree with are like, oh, that's because you're like watching like the lamestream media or whatever. I'm like, man, I know that CNN is owned by AT&T, and I know that NBC is owned by Comcast. I don't watch those stations. That's not where I'm getting this from. I'm getting this from Ivanka Trump's Twitter feed. She's throwing out a picture of her holding a can of beans this morning during a pandemic that's killed over 100,000 Americans, that has 40 million jobless. Like, what is going on? It's like, you know, and I feel like you can just draw your own conclusions from some of this stuff. And it's like, I feel like right now I'm living in a country that, like, and you know, it's frustrating because, like, members of my own family, like, I disagree with them. And like, you know what I was talking to somebody else about the other day, and this is maybe slightly off topic, but I like it when people get off topic because it's more interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day about how, you know, social discourse, or sorry, online discourse is the worst form of discourse, right? And it's generally the worst form of discourse because you have what I have been referring to since I listened to a great piece on this, prepared discourse, which is like, it's something that people have written out 3 or 4 times, deleted, gone back, edited, and prepackaged into a way that is either the most palatable or the most most likely to elicit a reaction in order to get likes and retweets and whatever it is to get that person a dopamine hit, right? And so you're consuming packaged, prepared information that is meant to elicit an emotional reaction. Generally speaking, you're engaging with people that have been dehumanized or anonymized, so you don't know, who you're talking to, and they're not a real human being. And there's generally no repercussions for the things that you say online. And so it's the worst form of engagement. And now it's the only form of engagement in America, because people aren't going to church. They're not going to restaurants. They're not going to bars. They're not going to frat parties. They're not going to school. They're not going to their classes. They're not seeing, they're not going to their apartment gyms or their yoga classes. There's no interpersonal human interaction going on right now, aside from very small closed groups of people that already trust and love each other. And I think what's happening is, like, now everybody's only form of interaction with one another is on these online channels. And I think it's been a real disservice and it's a real hazard to the way that people will think and perceive each other. And I'm really worried about it in this country. I think that people are flying off the handle a little bit.
I think it's true. I see what you're saying, like, and I can sort of even recognize that, because I think the more you're physically around other people, the more subconscious emotions of empathy come in, because you hear other conversations or you see other circumstances that happen. So
you have this, even Zoom can't recreate it, but like when you're in the presence of another person, you feel human, you feel their humanity.
yeah.
And I think that, like I don't know, I'm really worried about just kind of, and I don't think anybody wants to talk about this stuff in the sense, and that's a little frustrating for me. I appreciate you engaging with me on it, because I don't really get to talk to people about this a lot, because everybody wants to talk about, in this country, everybody wants to talk about, should we reopen or should we not reopen, or like, is like, what's worse, like 1 million dead or like 40 million unemployed? And I'm just like, what, like, why don't we talk about why our employment is coupled with our healthcare access? Like, why don't we talk about how, apparently 50% of people are living so precariously paycheck to paycheck that 32% of people were late on their July rent or home payments in America. Like, that, we have huge systemic problems that are all why do we say that people are essential workers and refuse to pay them a living wage? And you're basically, there's so many things that, my friend's an EMT in Denver, Colorado. She's an EMT, first responder. She makes $12.50 an hour, and that's basically minimum wage. And that is like astounding to me, that the person who's going to come and save your life and resuscitate you, take you to the hospital, is making $12 an hour in one of the more expensive cities in the United States. Like, we have a completely broken system here. Nobody wants to talk about these issues.
No. Well, and I think they, like you were saying, they talk about the stats, right? And just like, I mean, I originally come from an accounting background, and going, you're having the wrong conversation. Right. The conversation doesn't need to be how much more money. I mean, you can throw as much money as you want at a problem, but if you're not actually getting to the root of it, and I think the root's on both sides, because we have employers who have just gotten comfortable. I mean, ideally, minimum wage was supposed to be a starting wage. That was for like new people coming in, and you were supposed to go from there. But then we came in with a lot of these bigger corporations that just stalemated it there. So I think there's the business side of it, and then there's the education side of it, of we need to teach these people how to handle their money and how to properly budget. And we failed that in our school systems and just with other people, because these bad habits are getting handed down.
Tanya, people in this country are debating about whether or not masks help stop the spread of disease. That's the thing. Like you're talking about teaching people how to handle their finances. I'm talking about having visceral disagreements with people about whether or not covering their mouth helps prevent disease. And then they're like, oh, well, like I saw, like, it's like, people are like, oh, if the mask isn't 100% effective, then like, why bother wearing it? It's like, what are you talking about? Like,
hey, our prime minister like coined it. It's now called speaking moistly in Canada. Moistly,
that's fun. Yeah. I saw there was a great video to segue maybe back into some funny. There's a guy on YouTube. I'll give him a shout. His name is Ryan George. I love this dude. He's a Canadian. I can't remember where he's based in Canada. I think Montreal. And he's a Canadian guy. He's really, really funny dude, Ryan George. And he makes these great videos that go viral a lot. Really good content creator. And he had a really good one about like the dumbest timeline. And it was basically like, time travel, their interdimensional game show where they pull like versions of yourself from different dimensions. And then the smart ones have to guess what like the dumb timeline is like struggling with at this time. And then he's like, like people are really, it's like people are struggling with this basic thing. And then like the smart ones are like, going to the doctor. And it's like, no. Getting their symptoms checked. And it's like, no. They're actually struggling with wearing masks. And then it's just, and then Ryan George is like, well, sometimes like you want to like, you don't know that you're speaking moistly. Like, and I didn't realize that was like a Canadian thing with that. And then he's also, he's like, and sometimes you want to go out and get your hair cut or like go to the beach. And then they're just like, but people will die. And then he's like, well, yeah, but yeah, when you say it like that, and then he's like,
I did see that one.
oh, did you really? Did you see that? Okay, yeah.
I
So
did.
you know who I'm talking about then.
Yeah,
You know,
I've watched a couple. Actually, some of his videos inspired me to do one because when the whole pandemic thing was
like
happening,
yourself.
I was laughing because it was weird stuff that was open here. Like you, of course the grocery store, and of course the grocery stores stayed open, but all of our liquor stores were open regular hours, so you could get liquor because we don't want to prevent people from getting their liquor. And then all of our marijuana places were open. They didn't have to close like the rest of us. But like our taekwondo studio and stuff like that, and so all these other businesses were having to close. And I was like, I feel like I need to sneak with unmarked bills in the middle of the night, like to my waxing lady. So I've done this like crazy like spoof video in the middle of the night of like rolling down my lawn and like serpentining across the grass. And but it was just, I was like, who's deciding essential services? Like, where are these people?
The lack of preparedness is what gets me. Like, pandemics are just a certainty throughout human history, right? They will happen. Like,
like every 100 years, it seems like we're on point.
Like, and like in the lack of preparedness where it's like, what do we do? Like, we don't know. Like, governors and businesses, like, go figure it out. Like, it was so bizarre to see the lack of preparedness. And you know, it's funny, I have my own theories about the whole alcohol and marijuana things. In Denver, it was the same way. My mom, she's in Florida, she'd be cracking up. She's like calling me. She's like, so I see the marijuana businesses are essential, essential industry. And it's a funny bit, but like I actually agree with it, because my theory is when they, I think it was like late March. Yeah, it was probably late March. They sent out an emergency alert in Denver, and it was like, starting at 5 p.m. tomorrow, like all non-essential businesses will be closed, and then, everybody Googled, are liquor stores essential businesses? The answer was no. I looked outside my window. The line at the liquor store on my corner was wrapped around the building 3 times to get in. And the inside of that store was jam-packed shoulder to shoulder. And this is before people were wearing masks. And I think that basically what they realized was, if we close down the substance stores, like, we are going to have like a huge breeding ground for this stuff, in like a short time. Because any time frame where you say tomorrow at 5, next week at 5, like today at 5, it's going to be a madhouse in 24 hours leading up to that closure. So it's just impossible to close. And it also is funny because it kind of calls into question, like, why don't we have liquor sold at the grocery store in Denver? You can only get at a liquor store, which does create this kind of like finite specific place that you have to go to, instead of, the grocery stores which have remained open this whole time. So and
Canada's weird. Like, Alberta is all privatized for our liquor stores, but in Ontario it's I'm pretty sure it still is, but is run by the government. So it's like, kind of, no matter which province you go to, there's something different going on there. But, I do joke, and, and I will, put a little caveat out there, as I understand that there are some people that, use it for medical purposes and all of that other stuff. It was just, really what it was a funny bit of going,
great bit.
Listen, as a woman who, might need some sheets and giggles on her bed, waxing is very, very crucial. or those sheets are not going to be beneficial.
Totally essential industry. Totally essential. Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, like, the whole thing is like, I really like people that, like, and hopefully we're doing this a little bit for the audience, honestly. Like, I like people that try to find the funny in things. Like, I listen to this podcast on ESPN. It's the Dan Le Batard Show, and there's no sports right now, right? And so it's like, what are they been talking about for 3 or 4 months? And it's been great. They've been talking about, all sorts of different things, and like finding the funny, and the fact that the biggest sports network in the world is having these guys call in through Zoom and like work from their beds, and like can't get a proper, like soundboard inside there. And then like, oh, why is this? Oh, we're owned by Disney. Oh, we're small fries because Disney World shut down. Now Disney World's reopening in Florida, like, which is like,
oh, is that because I heard it was still like shut down, but
just reopened like 2 days ago, like, and it's just,
Yeah.
this country, I mean, it's just so like,
It's entertaining. Sometimes you gotta just, yeah.
oh, I mean, seeing, all my favorite Disney characters from my childhood wearing masks it's pretty funny and surreal. It's just like the whole thing is like, and so, and that's, I think, if you want to segue back into Sheets and Giggles, I feel like we've had like a half business, half not conversation. But like, I don't know, whatever's most interesting is what I like to talk about. But like, that's what we try to do, is we try to find the funny, and as much as we can, because I think that like the world is like a little too on edge. It's like a little too serious a lot, and if we can put some memes out there, some other things that make people crack up and smile and like brighten their day, and somebody knows that a tree's been planted from their order, and like, that type of stuff is really important to me, because it adds a lot of joy in the world, and like, man, we need more joy because of all the stuff we just talked about. It's so crazy.
And I think it's true. I think, that's how my tagline about, having fun, because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it,
Yeah.
came to be, was because whenever I started really losing the joy on a regular basis, I knew it was time to leave. And I've always really stuck to that philosophy, and it served me really well in life. The older I get, I mean, I'm in my 40s now, I literally just walk away. Like now I'm turning into one of those crabby women, or I'm like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I turn
Yeah.
around and I walk, which I'm really looking forward to my senior years where I can do that, never to go, it's just grandma.
It's so funny. I always wondered like if people just like got more like crotchety as they got older. Like I always kind of wondered if it was just like a natural process, because I just turned 30, so I'm on the other side of wise now, and and I'm realizing, yeah, like the older I get, the more I'm just like, at some point in time in conversations, I'm just like, all right, like I just
But I think it's just that you learn what, and to segue back into business, I think you just learn where your time is important, and it's okay to go, you know what, this conversation isn't serving me anymore. You don't have to be rude about it, but sometimes it's okay to just go, yeah, I'm out. Okay, have a good night, everybody.
and there's other times when like when I was younger, people would invite me to things, and I'd always go every time. And the pandemic's been a great time for me to get comfortable more being by myself and being alone. And I feel like I will say, for extroverts, like, this has been a very difficult time. If you get your energy from being around other human beings like I do, it's you feel drained a lot of the time. And especially, I think people like, also when it comes to like love languages, they think that's like exclusively to like relationships, but like, no, like I get a lot of like self-love and from physical touch, like hugging my friends and my family, and like words of affirmation, like being able to like talk to friends, and like have that type of validation, that type of and get interaction, gifting, like giving things to people, quality time, like spending time with other people, like acts of service, like all, like everybody's love language is really suffering right now, that no matter really what it is. And I think that that's also something that like is been difficult, in like spending more time by yourself. And so to segue it back into the Sheets, a lot of people have been spending a lot of time by themselves in their beds, and so it's actually been quite an interesting time for us from like a sales perspective as well. We saw like a huge drop in March, a huge drop swing in April and May, and then June we were out of like all of our inventory, and now July we're finally getting restocks in, and now it looks like there's going to be a second wave, or we never really finished the first. But we're actually opening up Canada next week.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So we have not been shipping to Canada this entire time, so that's going to be a new one. So
Yeah, I know. I picked mine up at the border, which can't do that anymore. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Ryan George is actually going to do our. We sponsored a couple of his videos, because he's a really funny dude, and I like sponsoring funny content creators. And he's also a nice guy. We become friends over time. But he's doing our Canada launch, so I'm kind of excited to see what he's gonna come up with.
Yeah.
our advertisement for the Canada launch. I give good content creators total free reign on whatever they want to do for the company. I think people will have fun with it, and it's worse to put handcuffs on that creative process.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, well, it has been just an absolute pleasure for me, not only to talk to you about business, but all of the other stuff that we did as well. I think I had so much fun getting into bed with you, which you are literally the first interview I've ever been able to say that to. And it brings me great joy to be able to say that.
I appreciate it. We always say jump into bed with us, and all that good stuff. This has been a super fun interview. Whenever I listen to interviews with if I listen to an interview with Tony Hawk, I don't want to hear him talk about skateboarding for an hour. If I listen to an interview with a football player, I don't want to hear anything about just football for an hour. So hopefully this was entertaining for people and not not a total I was hoping to learn about how to start a bed sheets business and now I have no idea. I've done other podcasts on that, by the way. If anybody else wants to listen to a deep dive into the unit economics of then supply chain of starting a bedding company, there's other stuff out there if you look around for sheets and giggles.
Yeah, but this was a good conversation you'd have
man,
sitting in bed.
Great.
Come on.
This is my life. This is
exactly what I would talk about if I was lying in bed.
Look out at the Rockies. My dog is in and out of the bedroom all day, and it's just been a real pleasure. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope you had as much fun as I did, laughing and just having a great conversation like I did with Colin. So I want to thank him again for coming on the show, for sharing his crowdfunding math and everything else that he did with us. Don't forget to head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca, click on blogs at the top of the page, and I'm going to link to everything we talked about today. So the design by us, where you can get masks made with their amazing sheets, and as also Ryan George's YouTube channel, so you can have fun laughing at all of the great videos. And if you're looking for great sheets, I absolutely love my Sheets and Giggles sheets. They are a really great quality product, so I would highly recommend them. And I don't get anything if you buy them. Well, I guess a tree gets planted, so I do get something because I do enjoy trees and oxygen. So no matter what you're doing today, whether you're getting beneath the sheets or whether you're building your empire, make sure that you take time to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?